Welcome to our 25th annual real estate conference, our virtual edition. Very excited to all of you participate with us today. We had over 825 registrants, so we're pretty excited about that. Actually, probably will be a new record for us for our annual conference, which is phenomenal. Really excited about the networking platform that we're on today. Hopefully you had a chance to visit during the networking session. In between our speakers, we will continue to have networking opportunities throughout the event. So hopefully you'll get a chance to meet and greet many of the participants at today's conference. A couple things I want to mention. During the networking session, when you're in the lobby, make sure you turn your camera on and your audio on so you can chat with individuals at the table that you're assigned to. Once you're in the networking, you can also move to a table. You can click on any table that has an open seat, move there, meet and greet new people. You will notice to the left of your screen, we have multiple floors. I think we have 9 floors open. So you can go to any of the floors, any of the tables, and again, meet and greet and network. On the first floor, we have tables set up so you can talk to representatives for each of the projects that will be presented here and that were highlighted today. Make sure if you want to talk to the representatives of the projects we're showcasing today, that you go to floor 1, you go to floor 1, and then you find their table and go sit and chat with them. The platform that we're on is called Remo, R-E-M-O. We have technical support from Remo, so if you have any issues, simply send a private message to them in the chat, and they'll get to you and help you. In the lower left-hand corner, there's also a little help button. You can go there as well. So I know one of the things that is common in this remote environment is the multitasking. So one thing I'd like you to do, at least right now, is hopefully pay attention to what I'm going to tell you here. If you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a chat box, but you'll also see a Q&A. If you want a question to go to a speaker, please click on the Q&A tab and put your question in that Q&A box. That's how we're going to monitor questions. You'll also notice if you go over there, when anyone posts a question, you can vote for it. So I encourage all of you to go visit the Q&A when it comes time for Q&A. Look at the questions that are being proposed and go in and vote for the questions you would like to hear the answers to, and it will actually rank them so we can get the highest ranked questions to our speakers. So with that, I want to thank our event sponsors today. Our presenting sponsor, U.S. Bank, has been with us, gosh, I don't even know how long, but ever since I've been associated with the program. Appreciate their sponsorship and support of our mission, which is, of course, is to support our students. So Mike Paris with U.S. Bank, shout out to you. Thank you for your continued support. Another long-term supporter of ours is MG Properties. They've been a corporate sponsor, again, as long as I've been associated with the program. Appreciate their sponsorship. They're also an organization that provides internship opportunities for our students, and over the years has actually hired many of our students. So Mark Gleberman, MG Properties, thank you again. I definitely want to recognize our supporting sponsors, EY, KPMG, Heinz, Pacifica, Voight, and Wells Fargo. Lastly, a shout out to the San Diego Business Journal. They've been a great partner of ours over the years. Barbara Chodas, thank you very much for the support that you've offered. I really appreciate, as I know everyone on this call appreciates, the great news that you provide the region and the positive approach to your reporting, and really looking at all the great things that are happening here in San Diego. So thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to introduce our opening speaker, and it's a pleasure to introduce Mayor Todd Gloria, the Mayor of San Diego. We're honored to have him join us today. As many of you know, Todd served as a city council member for District 3. He was the interim mayor in 2013. The current mayor resigned. Todd was then elected to represent California's 78th State Assembly District. Todd is an articulate, passionate, pragmatic leader, a great representative of San Diego. We're so happy and blessed to have you as our mayor, Todd. So I'm going to mute myself, turn my camera off, and let you take over. Thank you.
Awesome. Good morning, staff. It's great to see you. It's great to be here with everyone. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for this opportunity to address the conference. I recognize that some folks are still filtering in. I think we have all struggled over the last year with all the different platforms, or Zoom or WebEx or Google Hangout or now Remo. I'm just grateful that everyone's persisting to get onto these platforms, particularly today, to talk about I think is a really exciting subject of real estate generally, but particularly in the terms of what I want to share around housing, which is always a passion issue of mine. Staff, I want to express my appreciation to you and to my alma mater, University of San Diego, for creating these opportunities. I always love any chance I can get to sort of pay it back, if you will. They gave me a great education, and I'm grateful that USD is playing a leadership role in our community, particularly around this issue of real estate and housing. And I ended up at a table with some current Toreros who are currently in class. And so I had a great conversation with James, with Nash, and with Ross. And Ross is celebrating his birthday today. And I love that Ross is here on his birthday, because it says to me that we have a new generation coming up who are equally as passionate about making progress on issues around building some of these mega projects we're going to talk about today, as well as some of this housing that we so desperately need. And what I think is interesting about that conversation is I asked all three of those young gentlemen if they want to stay in San Diego. And they said, all of them said yes, which shows they have really good taste and good judgment. It was shown by being USD students, but the desire to stay in San Diego was a good call. The question, I think, and I don't want to speak for them, but I think there was some hesitancy in their answering, because I think they recognize that their ability to stay here is very much determined around the ability to find a quality job that will allow them to stay and that will pay them enough to be able to afford to live here, certainly to be able to rent a place, but hopefully someday to buy a home. And it's my commitment as mayor to do everything I can to work on this particular issue. And I will want to outline a little more about that in just a moment. I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that we're having this conference virtually because we still very much are in the middle of a pandemic. There's no issue I spend more of my time on right now than the COVID response. Everything from having all of our firefighters authorized to issue vaccinations. We have vaccinated tens of thousands of San Diegans via our firefighters who are literally on their mobile units and going to senior citizen homes to vaccinate people. That's the level of detail that we're going to so that we can knock down this virus, defeat COVID-19, and then set about going about the business of the city, reopening our economy and making key investments that will actually help stimulate the economy. And that's very much what this conference is about today. You have three mega projects that I see as being potential catalytic efforts to help us restart our economy. When we look at unacceptably high levels of unemployment, as we look at people who were already struggling in a difficult housing environment, and it will probably be made worse because of the pandemic, projects like Riverwalk, like the South Bay waterfront, like the transportation hub by Sandag, these are opportunities for us to show not just that we're back, but that we're going to build back better. And I'm really excited about that. And to the extent that two of those projects are in the city of San Diego, I'm very committed to making sure that whether it's the housing and transit station in Mission Valley, the Riverwalk being done by Hines, or Sandag's efforts to partner with the Navy to not just only keep 5,000 good paying Navy connected jobs in San Diego, but also to build a central mobility hub and adjacent housing. These are opportunities to really get what I want to see done around here, which is having San Diego embrace the fact that we are a major American city, a global city, the second largest in California, the 8th largest in the United States. And my belief is that when we embrace our size and really act accordingly, we'll take care of small problems that have persisted in our community for a long time, and we can tackle the even bigger ones that are happening. And I might, if I may, just point out there are a couple other mega projects that maybe didn't make the agenda today, but I'm thinking particularly of SDSU West, which it seems to be moving at lightning speed, and I like that. I'm an impatient mayor, and so I like seeing the progress on that site. And I'm continuing to work with partners on our sports arena site, where there's also an opportunity to build a lot more housing in a better future that more resembles our big city status as San Diegans. As I mentioned, though, when we embrace our size, we start to be able to deal with the small issues that have bedeviled us for too long that most other cities have resolved. And then we can start tackling the big issues that remain. And there's two that are connected to this real estate conversation that I think are important. As we discuss mega projects, those are important. But if we're going to solve our housing crisis, we're going to have to do it not just with big projects, but with a lot of little projects. What I've said to neighborhoods across San Diego is that we have a housing crisis that impacts all of us. And as a consequence, all of our neighborhoods are going to have to be a part of the solution. And the ways the city can help with that is to make sure that we're making the investments necessary to help build more housing. Now, this is going to be hard. I want to share with you all that the city was dealing with significant budget deficits before the pandemic. And of course, the pandemic has made it far worse. We rely very much on tourism, and these empty hotel rooms are certainly not helping our bottom line. President Biden's rescue plan is helping tremendously, and I'm deeply grateful to the administration and to Congress for giving us a lifeline financially, but we'll still have to make significant cuts. As we make those cuts, I will do it with an eye of making sure that we don't dig the hole deeper when it comes to housing affordability, and that we continue to invest in our planning department, led by the great Mike Hansen, who is helping to advance community plan updates and other sorts of land development code changes that I think can help facilitate new housing. I'm thinking particularly along our transit lines, to our development services department, led by incredible Elise Lowe and her team, who I'm working with to understand that we need to be a city as we get out of this recession and out of this pandemic that says yes a lot more than we say no. I think many of you have had the experience of maybe interacting with the city in a way that you felt like the city wasn't rooting for you, wasn't helping you, wasn't trying to champion your issues. I want to change that. And we are working to change that with Elise's leadership to really understand that if you're doing something new and different, we're not going to say no to that. We're going to say, tell us more about that. And that by doing so, that we're going to invite innovation and opportunity that will build housing that will allow James and Ross and Nash to be able to stay in San Diego. And so that is the hope. Invest in those community plan updates, do more regulatory relief, invest in our organization, including paying our employees better to make sure that we retain quality talent so the people who know how to get things done stay here for the long haul, don't move on to another jurisdiction that might reward them better. The second issue relative to making sure that we're addressing more, I'm sorry, let me take a step back. We also need to do more to allow for the construction of more naturally affordable housing. I was disappointed by the failure of Measure A last year, but I know that we have more to do with that we can do to create naturally affordable housing, and that's facilitating the construction of more accessory dwelling units, but also duplexes, quadplexes, bungalow courts, row homes, townhomes, the kinds of stuff that provide first-time home ownership opportunities. I think this year the state legislature is going to finally get some significant legislation passed that will facilitate cities like San Diego to do this, who want to do it, and the others who may be a little more reluctant to do it as well. Collectively, we can all, working together, solve the state's housing crisis. And whether it's local efforts that I'm trying to lead or statewide efforts, I'm hopeful that this will be a year where we see tremendous progress, because we know that the housing crisis was bad before the pandemic. And I think we also know it's going to get a lot worse afterward. Transitioning, housing is a major issue. The most obvious symptom of our housing crisis is our homelessness crisis. And much as I said a moment ago that every neighborhood has to be a part of the solution on housing affordability, every neighborhood also has to be a part of solving our homelessness crisis. I'm mindful that just a week ago, 3 unsheltered individuals died on our streets when they were hit by a vehicle driven by an intoxicated driver. That kind of tragedy happens too often in our city. And as mayor, it does not make me proud. It makes me extremely sad that that is happening in our city. I mentioned a moment ago, we're the 8th largest city in the United States, but we're the 5th largest homeless population. And while there are many complex and various reasons why people are homeless, the fact of the matter is a big part of it is the fact that we don't have enough housing, certainly not housing that many of our most vulnerable neighbors can afford. And so again, it goes back to, if San Diegans want us to tackle homelessness, and what's interesting is, as mayor, when I talk to San Diegans, I talk to many of them every single day, in the middle of a pandemic and a recession, the thing that people say to me most often is they want something done about housing affordability, and they want something done about homelessness. Well, again, the solutions to that are not easy ones, but the solutions are going to be in every corner of the city. And so earlier this month, we started the city's first wide homeless outreach team, not concentrated just downtown where the problem has been historically, but in every city council district, so that there is the ability to respond, not with law enforcement, but with a social worker, a trained professional that has access to services to get these folks off the streets. I want to tell you that I'm going to continue to do this work. It's not easy work. A lot of folks think it should get done overnight. If that's your expectation, you have the wrong idea. That's some small town mentality to think that a problem this complex can be solved simply with a shiny object. This is going to take difficult work over a number of years, grinding it out. But as your mayor, I'm committed to grinding it out because it's unacceptable to have 8,000 people who are homeless in our region, and we can and must do better. So I want to just conclude by saying that I think this is an interesting and hopefully hopeful time. In the midst of a really difficult year that we've all experienced, I choose to look at the future very optimistically. And whether it's the investments that we're making in these mega projects or the kinds of small scale stuff that we can do with infill development that is, I think, an important key to solving this problem, to big things that are related. I'm thinking about the city updating our climate action plan this year, or as Vice Chair Sandag, it's incumbent upon me to remind you that we're passing a new regional transportation plan this year called the 5 Big Moves that I very much support and that I believe will help create the infrastructure to help facilitate some of this new housing development. I see a lot of opportunity on San Diego's horizon. And so I ask all of you to do your part to finish off this pandemic, to do all the things you're supposed to do in terms of wearing a mask and staying socially distant, getting vaccinated when it's your turn. Believe it or not, politicians are not at the front of the line for vaccines, so I have not been vaccinated yet, but I promise you the second I'm eligible, I will go get it, and I ask for you to do the same. When we do that, we can defeat COVID-19, we can reopen our economy, and we can start tackling with purpose our housing affordability crisis that, again, is going to be critical about whether or not people like Ross, James, and Nash can live in San Diego. And I want to be really clear, I want them to stay in San Diego. They are our competitive edge against other cities in this increasingly shrinking global economy. If we have the skills and the talents that those young men are getting from University of San Diego, where I know there's a quality education, I say that as a proud alumni, if we can keep them here in San Diego, we'll stay at a competitive edge, and I will put our city up against any other city on this planet. If we instead tell them that, good job, good luck, here's your diploma, there's the door, get out, we won't be successful. So I hope that today's conversations will be illuminating for more ways that we can get things done. And I'll wrap up by saying that I look forward to coming back again and again to talk with you all. I hope that you'll let my office know when we can be helpful in addressing some of that culture of yes that I want to get to that notion of tell me more instead of tell me no. And to this idea of making the steady, grinding it out work that's going to be necessary to solve these significant issues. Randy Wild from my team is my lead on these issues. He's an incredibly talented member of my staff. And if you don't know Randy, I would highly encourage you to get out and get in touch with him. Between he and myself, my hope is that we can make real progress. And that by the end of my time as your mayor, many, many years from now, that we'll be able to collectively celebrate our success. It's dramatically reducing the number of homeless on our streets, dramatically increasing the amount of naturally affordable housing in our communities, and celebrating the construction of major projects that are catalytic for our economy and really show to the world that we're a big city and we'll start acting like it. Thank you again for your time and attention today, and I hope you have a wonderful conference this morning.
Mayor Gloria, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you. Thanks for your great leadership and your comments certainly on the housing project. We didn't purposely put you with 3 of our students, but great that you got there. I will, and I'm sure you noticed this, the passion and the just overall maturity of our students, and all students, not just at USD, but at our other universities here, San Diego State and UCSD. It's just amazing to me how mature they are and how passionate they are in their pursuit of a career in education. I'll also speak on behalf of our students in the real estate program, and I think the students in the program at San Diego State and UCSD. I think they're all focused on this issue of housing, and I think they want to be a part of that solution ultimately. So happy that we had a chance to chat about that today, and we're with you and supportive of that major initiative. So, Mayor Gloria, thank you again so much for your.
Thank you, staff.
I'm now going to introduce our first speaker for our first mega project. That is Riley Webb. Riley is a land development manager at Pacifica Companies. He is involved in entitlement processes, manages a variety of the land development projects for Pacifica for multiple asset types, including multifamily, hospitality, senior housing, mixed use, and retail. Riley is a graduate of St. Lawrence University, Phi Beta Kappa there. But his real claim to fame and what he's most proud of is being a student of mine in our continuing ed program. I think I can safely say that, right, Riley? That was probably the high point of your education.
100%.
I'll let you take it over. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for the introduction, staff. Diane, can you pull up the slides? Oh, perfect. So good morning. Thanks for having me. My name is Riley Webb. I'm the project manager for Amara Bay, which is Pacifica's portion of the Chula Vista Bayfront master plan. I'm excited to speak not just about our project, but about the map as a whole. Going to kind of break up the presentation into 3 parts because it is a lot to go over. So we'll kind of cover the history of the master plan, our project, which is Amara Bay, and then an overview of some of the other ongoing projects in the master plan. So the Chula Vista Bayfront master plan scope, it was a joint planning effort between the city of Chula Vista and the port of San Diego, and Pacifica Companies ended up being heavily involved, which we'll kind of get to in a minute. It was a joint planning effort because both the city and the port of San Diego had properties with jurisdiction within the master plan area. So basically the way they divided it was everything that was west of the 5. And in that particular case, both the port and the city of Chula Vista had properties with jurisdiction. And so they kind of combined, and it kind of dual tracked through the port of San Diego and then as well through the city of Chula Vista. The overall master plan is 550 acres, of which 230 acres of that is dedicated to parks and open space. And prior to the master plan, most of the properties were largely industrial. So when they went through, one of the things that was really a big focus was making sure that they had other uses within the overall master plan. So in addition to the parks and open space, 3,000 hotel rooms were entitled, 1,500 residential units, and an RV resort, among some other zoning changes. Next slide. So this is a rendering of the master plan as it was working its way through the EIR process. You can really see the emphasis on the open space, while also centrally locating the density in the middle of the property. The master plan is obviously on the bayfront, so a lot of effort was put in to maintain and expand existing wetlands and biological habitat found on both the north and the south sides of the master plan. Next slide. So here's a little timeline, and this is kind of the bulk of what we'll talk about in terms of the history of the master plan. It started back in the year 2000 when Pacifica Companies acquired 100 acres of bayfront land located just west of E Street and Highway 5. At the time, Pacifica Companies brought forward a coastal development permit to build approximately 2,000 condos, and the environmental community was not particularly happy about the location of the project or the type of project. Up until that point, Bayfront had been long neglected and had no master planning previously. They had long served as salt mines, power stations, and then military aircraft production with the old Roar and Goodrich facilities. In 2002, the city and Port Authority initiated the Chula Vista Bayfront Master Plan, largely as a result of this push to do some kind of master planning process because Pacifica had brought forward this project 2 years prior. Pacifica was asked to participate and help identify a more environmentally friendly solution to their proposed development. And after years of negotiation, a solution was reached in which we exchanged 100 acres that we had previously acquired for 35 acres of port tidelands as part of the actual master plan approvals. 8 years after the master plan was initiated, the EIR was finally approved by the port and the city. And then at the same time, there's several different documents that were kind of completed along with that EIR. There's a land exchange, which I referenced. There's a settlement agreement between the port, the city of Chula Vista, Pacifica, and the environmental agencies and environmental advocates, along with some various other legal documents that kind of made up the entirety of the master plan and really the exchange between us and the port. In 2002, the Chula Vista Bayfront Specific Plan and local coastal program were approved by the California Coastal Commission. That was the city of Chula Vista's portion of the master plan. And then in 2016, escrow finally closed on that land exchange. And one of the things that you kind of see there is between 2010, when the land exchange agreement was signed between us and the port, and when escrow closed was 6 years. That's because a good portion of the property that we exchanged with the Port of San Diego was formerly ROAR's aircraft production facility. So there was a lot of remediation and work that needed to be done, and some of that remediation still is occurring to this day. In 2018, the development agreement between Pacific Companies and the city of Chula Vista was signed, and then finally, 2 weeks ago, our public improvement CDP was approved by the Port of San Diego. Next slide. So this is just kind of an overview of the master plan. Again, you can see our property, which is in the orange, just east of the marina. And the previous 100 acres that we owned was on the north side of that, up where the Signature Park is called out. Next slide. And this is just a drone shot of the property in its current state today. You can see the marina on the left, and then this is the J Street sweep, which is the J Street transition into Marina Parkway, and then our parcel over there on the right-hand side. Next slide. Pacifica's portion of the Chula Vista Bayfront Master Plan is called Amara Bay. It's 35 acres located within the Harbor District. The master plan was divided into 3 different districts, the central district being called the Harbor District. Our development will consist of up to 1,500 residential condos, 420,000 square feet of office and retail space, and a 250-room hotel. In addition to all of that, we have new street construction along Marina Parkway, J Street, and then a brand new Street A and a Street C to build out the public infrastructure within the property. Next slide. So this is an overview of the site plan for our property. The residential has been located to the west and the commercial and hotel to the east. I'll get into one of the challenges of the site plan in a second, but what's interesting to note about the master plan is it established overall programming, but did not place specific densities. So we can place those 1,500 residential condos anywhere we want across those 7 front parcels. We're not limited to your traditional density, 1 per 1,000 or 1 per 400. However we want to make it fit within that property, we can make it fit. Development is guided by certain development policies, which contain a few restrictions related to the FAR, lot coverage, and view corridors, but it's not like your traditional zoning that you would see in the city of San Diego. One of the downsides of that, though, is that every project that is constructed in there requires its own coastal development permit, which is appealable to the California Coastal Commission. Next slide. So this is just kind of a rendering of the overall site and what it could look like at final build out. Next slide. And this is looking up at the commercial parcels, the hotel on your right-hand side, and then some additional commercial parcels. Next slide. This last one shows the view corridors that will exist throughout the property. This was an essential requirement of the Coastal Commission. There are 95-foot wide view corridors to the bay between every parcel, and those view corridors extend all the way up to the 5. The Coastal Commission really cared about having kind of view access from the 5, and so individuals that are driving north or south along the 5 could see all the way out to the bay and to the marina. Next slide. So let's talk about some of the unique aspects of this development as a result of it being part of a land swap. We're the only private development in California that's located west of the mean high tide line. So that little dotted line that runs right through the middle of our parcel is the mean high tide line. When the Port of San Diego was created by the state in 1962, the determiners of their land is the mean high tide line. So if you go anywhere else in San Diego and really anywhere else in California, pretty much everything that is west, or we'll call it closer to the water of the mean high tide line, falls within a public agency. There's no private property within that. As part of the land swap, because the mean high tide line runs right through it, it creates some interesting entitlement and permitting process. One of those things is it gets processed through 3 agencies: the port, the city of Chula Vista, and the Coastal Commission. One of the other things that we have the honor of doing is processing things through additional agencies: Caltrans, MTS, SDG&E, City of San Diego, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board. I think anyone that's worked with agencies or worked on land that is public land, they know that agencies love to put their easements and their improvements on other public agencies' land. Obviously, with a land swap, we've now inherited all of those conflicting easements and that own mess. Next slide. So challenges of the project. Probably the biggest is that cross-agency nature. So for example, the coastal development permit that we got 2 weeks ago for the public improvements, streets, storm drains, water, sewer, was processed through the Port of San Diego, but the actual improvement permits are processed through the city. As much as we love our partners over at the city and the Port of San Diego, and they've been fantastic, and we're really appreciative of the work that they put in, there is often times where there's conflicts between their 2 desires. And so there's this kind of dance and negotiation that has to occur every time that we submit plans between the 2 of them, because they both review, but only one of them issues. One of the other things is a temporary road that we are going to consider constructing as part of the public improvements project. We're going to construct temporary road basically as a way to provide access during construction to the port tidelands and to the park and marina. If you recall from the last slide, our property was kind of in dark gray and it said city jurisdiction on it. And that's because when the land swap occurred, the city of Chula Vista took over the permitting for the property within that gray area. However, with the public improvements, it crosses both the city jurisdiction and the port jurisdiction. So for this temporary road, at one point in time, we were going to have to process 2 separate CDPs to build one single road. It's not the easiest way to do things. It's definitely a bit of a headache at the same time. Another challenge has been the passage of time. As you saw, the process started all the way back in 2002. The EIR was approved in 2010, and we're now 2021. Things that the Coastal Commission cares about now, they didn't necessarily care about as much back then, and one of those things is sea level rise. So a lot of the documentation and the inputs and what was established as basically the baselines are no longer applicable. And one of the other issues is when the master planning was occurring, mixed use wasn't really utilized. And so if you recall, all of our residentials on one side and all of our commercial and hotels are on the other side. We don't really have that integration of uses, and so you really have a split between the 2 of them. In order to do that integration of combining and doing more of a mixed use type project, it would require going back and doing a brand new local coastal program, not something that we necessarily want to do or do the heavy lifting on. The last one that we've more recently discovered is the conceptual plans don't have any dimensions or scales. So you can see over here on the right-hand side, this lays out what the building footprints are for our development. It sets the height limits as well as what the city and the port would consider the developable area. But there's no scales and we don't really have any dimensions. So when we go to process plans, the hotel, let's say, which is the bottom left parcel, we don't know how wide that hotel can be. It's a best guess, and we're trying to work with the city and the port to negotiate what that width can be. But because there's no dimensions or scales, it's a negotiation, and there's a fear of if we go too wide, Coastal Commission will appeal it and we'll be in that process. So there's a tendency to be conservative when we look at how we're going to do development within the property. Next slide. Just kind of going back a little bit, as part of the actions that occurred in 2010, one was settlement with environmental organizations. Out of that came a variety of obligations, some that we look at as enhancements rather than obligations. Every building will have to have LEED Silver certification. Everything's going to be sustainably designed, and other environmentally sensitive aspects will have to be incorporated into the buildings. Some of these obligations are unique to Pacifica, such as the LEED Silver, while others are required throughout the Bayfront master plan for all the properties. Next slide. So current status of our project, 2 weeks ago, we had the approval for the coastal development permit for street design and construction. We're hoping to break ground on that by the end of this year. We're in the middle of final round of processing the tentative subdivision map with the city and Port of San Diego, and we're working on our first residential building. We are involved in negotiations on some of the other residential and commercial parcels as well, and we're hoping to have a commercial parcel under construction in 2022 along with our residential parcel. Next slide. So we'll take a quick look at the rest of the master plan. This obviously has been in process for over 20 years, and next year's probably going to be the biggest momentum driver of the master plan and it moving forward. Along with our project, there's 4 other major projects coming online or beginning construction this year and next year. Just a little disclosure on behalf of the port, all the dates and dollar amounts, with the exception of the Costa Vista RV Resort, are subject to financial closings. So the dates and dollar amounts are just current projections. The port wanted me to make sure that I communicated that to everyone. Next slide. So first up is the Costa Vista RV Park. This is being developed by Sun Communities at the northern end of the master plan. It replaces the RV park that's existing over by the Harbor Park, where the Gaylord Hotel is going to be developed. The new RV resort has 246 stalls and a total investment of over $55 million. Construction is pretty much complete, and their grand opening is next week on April 1st. It's a really cool site. It's going to be an awesome place to stay, and I would really encourage people to check it out. Even if you're not going to stay there, it's definitely worth going down and walking around and kind of experiencing really the first development in Chula Vista Bayfront in decades. Next slide. And this is just a rendering of what that site will look like or currently looks like. Next slide. Next up is Sweetwater Park. This is required to be completed prior to the Pacifica Gaylord Certificate of Occupancy is being issued. It consists of 21 acres and will connect the Gaylord Hotel to the south and the RV Resort to the north. Scheduled to begin construction in 2023. However, the port did recently complete the first phase, which is the bicycle and pedestrian path. So the park actually already connects those 2 projects today. Next slide. This is the current conceptual plan that was approved by the Port Commission. The emphasis of Sweetwater Park is really on the natural areas surrounding it. There's wetlands on either side of it and biological habitat on either side of it. The purpose of the park is really to educate and kind of move people through an open and natural experience. It's not really supposed to be an active park. It's more of a passageway as well as an education site. Next slide. The next major project and park is the Harbor Park. Current plans have the park being constructed in multiple phases. Phase 1 is budgeted for $19.5 million, which will be funded by bonds from the Chula Vista Bayfront Facilities Financing Authority. Conceptual plans were approved by the port in late 2020, and construction's expected to begin in 2023. The reason it's not expected to begin until 2023 is because the Gaylord Hotel is going to be using a portion of where the park will be as part of their construction laydown. The park will be taking a portion of those existing improvements, so the port needs to wait for the demolition and initial construction of the hotel before they can move forward. This park will be 25 acres when it's complete, and just between those 2 parks, you obviously have 46 acres of parkland in one central area. Next slide. This is the kind of the location and conceptual plan. That's the Gaylord Hotel in the background. And this is just phase 1. The idea is really to have a beach on the bay Whereas the Sweetwater Park, like I said, is a lot more natural, non-active. The Harbor Park's going to be the site of active recreation. Some of the ideas that have been floating around is paddleboard rentals, kayak rentals, whatever they can do to kind of really activate and make it an active park versus a passive park. Next slide. The final and largest project is the Gaylord Pacific Hotel. Other than the Pacifica Exchange, this project was the largest driver of the overall master plan. It had its own kind of stops and starts, but they're finally going to be breaking ground, hopefully by the end of this year. Projected budget is over $1 billion, and it will consist of 1,600 rooms and 235,000 square feet of convention space. I spoke with their project manager actually on Monday. They are hoping to begin construction by December 31st of this year. Otherwise, they expect first quarter of 2022. They started the bid process in January of this year, and they expect financing to close come summertime. Next slide. And this is just a rendering of the hotel that they will be developing. Everything faces west. It's going to have great views out to the bay, and then interaction with the harbor park. Next slide. So as you can see, 2021 and 2022 are going to be big years for the Chula Vista Bayfront. All the projects shown on this slide are either going to be opening or beginning construction in this rough time period. It's really great to see the momentum building down there, and San Diego is going to see a drastically different Bayfront in the next 5 years. Next slide. Obviously, a lot to cover in 20 minutes, and definitely a 10,000-foot overview of what the Chula Vista Bayfront Master Plan is, but I'm happy to take any questions, staff.
Thank you, Ed. We've got a couple questions in the chat box, and I've got a couple of my own as well. One of the questions, and I think it was meant for Mayor Gloria, which we didn't do a Q&A with him, but with a timeline like this, how do we, how will housing ever be affordable? I think it's a good question to ask, and I think it gets to the heart of how long it takes to get a project from acquisition of land, to development and into the rental stream. So 20 years, a long time. I counted 9 entities that you were involved with. One question I have around that, you talked about private ownership. Does that make it more difficult, to get through the process than the other parcels that didn't have private ownership, or do they have to go through the same set of steps?
It's different. So, for example, like the Gaylord project, because it's a leasehold, not fee simple ownership, the way they're handling easements and the way they're handling their entitlements looks a little bit different. What makes ours a little bit more difficult is really the fact that because the mean high tide line runs right through the middle of it, we basically, every time we go to do a project, we have to look at where that mean high tide line is and then decide, okay, are we processing this one through the city of Chula Vista, or are we processing this one through the Port of San Diego? And if that project crosses it, then you process a dual track CDP. And the other issue is because we're the only one in the state of California, every time that we go to do something, it's the first time with them. So there's no precedent set for us to really kind of rely on, and means the attorneys get involved a lot.
I also noticed that I think most, if not all, your residential product is for sale. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay, so there is one of the questions that came up either on your project or just in general for the entire master plan. Any idea of what types of affordable housing will be incorporated into the major plan?
So we are technically the only residential units in the entire Bayfront master plan. Right now, it is solely for sale product. We are looking at potentially having some conversations with the city of Chula Vista about that. But as part of the settlement agreement, as well as our development agreement with the city of Chula Vista and the environmental agencies, we have pretty extensive affordable requirements. As well, one of the big things that we have is a fund is being essentially set up. So the 1% of the sale of each unit will go into that environmental fund for use within the Bayfront master plan. And then for the first 7 years after the first sale, any subsequent sales, 1% of that sale goes into that fund as well.
Great. And I'm sure a lot of individuals on the call today are wondering why no residential. Is that because it's on port land? Is that, I mean, they don't generally have residential on port land. Is that right?
That's correct. So Portland the Port of San Diego solely exists on the revenue driven by the properties that are on their land. So the hotels, the restaurants, all of that, they exist solely on revenue. They don't get, I don't believe they get property tax. And so they don't necessarily want to do any kind of residential. I don't believe Coastal Commission will allow for it.
One question that came in that seems to be popular. Have you selected GCs for the project yet?
We have not selected GCs for this project yet.
Okay, you may get 7 calls.
Fully expect it.
Next question, height of the buildings, how high are the highest buildings? Concerned about, too many high rises kind of changing the look of the Bayfront and city.
Yeah, so that is the interesting thing about it. Almost every single parcel is entitled for a high rise. So it is solely going to be kind of high rise developments. I think the lowest building is 80 feet, and we have all the way up to 190 feet. And a large part of that was the environmental groups, so Environmental Health Coalition, Audubon Society, your traditional kind of anti-developer groups were actively involved in the negotiation, and they really wanted to restrict where the development was. That's why you have 230 acres of parks. So the exchange for that was 35 acres, all the density in one area, but you get to go up.
Follow-up question to that just got popular. In addition, to backlash from environmental groups, did you receive any pushback from the local communities regarding, having such a large project being developed?
So fortunately, no, we didn't have a ton of community pushback. A large part of that is the Bayfront had been neglected for so long. There wasn't really any residential over there. Your traditional kind of community pushback from single family homes just doesn't exist over there. And it'd been neglected. It was the old power station, and it was old kind of military aircraft production. And the community of Chula Vista actually really wants to see something done there. They want that Bayfront to be something special. So if anything, we actually got community assistance in getting these projects moved forward.
Well, that is great to hear. As you go up and down the 101, there are, campgrounds intended for tent use. Any tent camping options to your knowledge in the RV area?
No, it's solely RV.
Okay, we're running a little behind, not much. Going to have one more question. And then we'll go back into our networking mode. How long will it take to develop? How many phases do you have?
So we're looking at it kind of from a variety of perspectives. The initial phase is going to be that first residential building, and then hopefully a first commercial building. And then from there, we're going to kind of assess the market. A lot of it is going to be dependent on whether or not we have to stick with condos, or if we can potentially renegotiate the development agreement and do some apartments. We expect that if we do go back and have that conversation with them, because we had to contribute 1% of the sale into that environmental fund, we'll have to do some kind of impact fee exchange, basically apples to apples on that. And that will kind of really dictate it. But the goal is really to move that project forward as quickly as possible. We aren't looking at it as a phase over 10, 20 years. Once we get under construction, we do believe with Gaylord Pacific coming in and their hotel starting construction this year and being complete within 3 years, that there's going to be a desire to be down in that area. And so we are looking at it to move forward as quickly as possible.
Okay, again, running a little late, but actually I am going to ask one more question. You said 20 years ago, you looked at things differently then than you're looking at it now. One thing is, transportation, Uber, autonomous vehicles, more mass transit. How has that changed the parking requirement there, if at all?
It hasn't changed it at all. And the short answer to that is largely driven. So all the benefits from Uber and reduction in parking and all that has really been driven by cities. The Coastal Commission is very old school, and they care about public access and making sure everything's sufficiently parked. So they won't entertain any kind of innovative solution or give you any kind of discount for access to transit or anything like that. So we haven't been fortunate enough yet. Now, in the next 5 years, that may change, but the last conversation that we kind of had with them about a year ago about reducing some of that parking, they had no entertainment of the idea.
Riley, thank you very, very much. Incredible project. Best of luck to you. We are running a little behind. I'm going to push the agenda by probably 5 minutes. We were going to reconvene at 9:05. We will reconvene at 9:10. And I'm going to push us all back into the networking. Riley, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, staff.
Speaker. A quick introduction to our second speaker, Eric Hepfer with the Hines. He's managing director of Hines. He's responsible for pre-development, development, entitlement, asset management, acquisition, disposition, leasing, and financing of projects in San Diego, which is a lot to handle. Eric has a master's of business administration from a little-known school on the East Coast called Harvard, and a Bachelor of Science in Civil and Environmental Engineering at Virginia Military Institute. Eric joined Hines in 2012 here in the San Diego office. Prior to joining Hines, Eric was a lieutenant in the United States Navy, where he served as a nuclear submarine officer. And Eric, I should tell you that one of our speakers later, Captain Franklin, also served in submarine duty. So hopefully the two of you can connect at some point. Eric, twice awarded the Navy Achievement Medal. Eric, thanks for joining us. Thanks for your service, and we'll let you take it away on Riverwalk.
Great. Good morning, and thank you, staff. It's an honor and a privilege to be with everyone this morning, and I want to just say thanks to Mayor Gloria for being with us. I'm so appreciative of your efforts on housing and your boldness as a leader, and also what a great opportunity to be here with the University of San Diego. I'm a strong believer that universities produce the human capital that's the engine required for our economy, and USD does such a great job at producing leaders for the next generation. And so I hope that I get to meet a lot of USD students today. And if I don't get to meet you today, I hope we can do that at some point in the future. So with that, let's jump into Riverwalk. We can go to the next slide, and I'll just give a brief introduction of Hines and who we are. So we are a global real estate development investment management firm. We've been around for over 60 years. We're in over 200 cities in 23 countries across the world, and have about $124 billion in assets under management, which makes us one of the largest real estate investment managers globally. People think of us often historically as office developers, but as you can see by the pictures here and the stats, we are in every product type, and our San Diego business is no exception. So we can go to the next slide. I'll talk just briefly for a second about our San Diego history. I call San Diego home and have been here for about 10 years, but Hines has been in San Diego for over 25 years and have done a couple of game-changing mega projects in the region. The first was the Petco Park project for the Padres, and then we parlayed that into the 700,000 square foot La Jolla Commons project in UTC. And so we think that Riverwalk is a great extension of some of these mega projects that we have already done and are looking forward to bringing that out of the ground. So if we go to the next slide, I'll just talk for a second about what we'll cover this morning. And I look forward to getting through my presentation, hopefully quickly, so we can get to Q&A and I can answer the questions that are important to you. So we'll cover a bit of the vision of the project, kind of how that's evolved over the years. I'm going to take you inside the project and show you some renderings and talk to you about how we're thinking about design. We'll talk for a minute about the approval process, and then I'll talk about our next steps and the phase one project that we expect to bring out of the ground next year. And then most importantly, answer your questions after that. So we can jump to the next slide, and I'm going to lay out the vision for Riverwalk. So we want Riverwalk to be San Diego's first truly transit-oriented village. And what I mean by that is, while there have been many transit-oriented developments in San Diego and elsewhere, we think Riverwalk is going to be the first neighborhood in San Diego that was designed to function with transit at its core. So most development that I'm familiar with has transit at the back door. Maybe there's a bus station somewhere around the corner, or there's a train station at the back of the project. We've designed Riverwalk so that the train station will be central to the project, and we hope that will catalyze a paradigm shift in the way people think about transit. And we hope that this project will prove that a transit-oriented lifestyle is not only possible, but it could even be preferable. You know, as a personal note, in a non-COVID environment, I ride the train every day nearly to my office, and it's a great experience, and I hope many others will do that once Riverwalk is moving forward. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll give you a quick overview of what the project actually is. So many of you are probably familiar with the Riverwalk Golf Course next to the Fashion Valley Mall in the heart of Western Mission Valley. And we have just received entitlements for 4,300 residential units, of which 10% of those, 430, are going to be on-site affordable, 1 million square feet of office and commercial space, 150,000 square feet of retail, and the thing I'm most proud of is nearly 100 acres of parks and open space right in the center of our city. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll talk about the specific objectives that we're seeking to achieve with Riverwalk. I talked about transit already, and I noted from Mayor Gloria's talk earlier this morning, he mentioned sort of 3 goals that he has, and I think Riverwalk aligns with those. The first is transit, which we've talked about. The second is climate, and the third is housing. So a transit-oriented village is vital to the city achieving its goals under its climate action plan. We have an ambitious climate action plan as a region, and we're updating that now. And central to reducing greenhouse gas emissions is to get people out of our cars. And Riverwalk is going to go a long way towards doing that. The next thing we get to do is address San Diego's housing crisis. The development of 4,300 units goes a long way to helping that. And most importantly, 430 on-site affordable housing units will ensure that we've got housing for all income levels, which is important to the character of our community. And then our next goal is to create a sense of place. And placemaking is a really ethereal topic and one that we're very passionate about. But we want, at the end of the day, when people live at Riverwalk after this is built out, to say that I live at Riverwalk, not that I live in Mission Valley. And we want people to feel a connection to their neighborhood when we're done with this development. And then finally, we're going to enhance the environment, not only through our reduction of greenhouse gas emissions through transit ridership, but also through the restoration of the San Diego River that runs right through the site. So with that, let's get into some of the specifics about the project. And before I do that, I'll just say that Hines is honored to own this property alongside a local family, the Levi and Cushman families. They've owned this site for over 100 years. And many of you probably are familiar with the family through their various philanthropic efforts around the community, including the Jacobson Cushman Food Bank. And so we're honored to be developing this project with them, and it's a legacy project for their family as well as for Hines. And we're looking forward to bringing something forward that the city and we all can be very proud of. So with that history, let me talk to you a little bit about the previous entitlements for this site, and we can go to the next slide. If you've been around San Diego for a while, you know that this Riverwalk site actually was originally approved for development back in 1987. And here is a plan straight out of the Levi Cushman specific plan of what that development would be. It involved the channelization of the San Diego River, several high-rise developments, if you can see them there, a lot of hotel, and then some housing. This development never made it out of the ground due to several factors, including a lack of a market for all the office that was contemplated. And so after it sat for 30 years as a golf course, we can go to the next slide. The family asked us to come alongside them in 2016 and re-envision the master plan for the site, and update it, and come up with a plan that would make sense in today's environment. And so we threw out the original entitlements and took a fresh look at the site and thought about what are the opportunities and constraints that we have here on this property. And really, there's sort of three main things as you think about designing this site. The first is the San Diego River. It's very rare you get to develop a property that literally has a river running right through it. And so we wanted the project to celebrate the river, but also respect it. And so we wanted to pull development away from the river, unlike in the initial plan where it was right up alongside the river. Next, there's a floodway and floodplain in this area. And so the light blue shading you see on the screen is where this site naturally can flood. And so as we thought about it, we can do some development in that area, which involves raising pads up out of the floodway and the floodplain. But by and large, we want to make that an open area for the river, and also to serve as a public park because 99% of the time it's dry and very enjoyable. And then the final opportunity here is the MTS trolley line that runs right through the site. It's very rare that you get to develop a site that has a trolley line already running through it. And so we wanted to make sure we were taking advantage of that and building with that trolley line and future trolley stop as a central focal point. So jumping to the next slide, we started thinking about how could we assemble land uses that would capitalize on these opportunities and constraints. And just very quickly, the red here represents a mixed-use residential core. And so the idea here was, let's build a high-density residential with ground floor retail around a transit station that would be walkable. And let's flank that on either side with the tan there, which is housing as well. Let's keep the floodway and floodplain generally open to function as a public park. And then let's put office and commercial down on the southeastern corner of the site, which is shown in blue, which will have great freeway visibility, great access, and we think function as a wonderful opportunity for a tech or a life science campus at some point in the future. So we can go to the next slide, and you can see what that looks like in a more developed plan. And this is our, when it comes up, you'll see this is our final site plan that was just approved by the San Diego City Council. And if you're not used to reading these sorts of things, what this is showing is 20 or so wrap and podium multifamily projects, mostly along Friars Road, centered along the transit stop, all walkable to transit, and also walkable to the large public park. So with that, let's leave the site plans behind and look at some pictures, as those are, I think, a lot more fun and a lot more instructive. So I'm going to fly through some of these images, but I want to use them to describe the place that we're trying to create here. And I'll point out that on every one of these slides, if you can follow them, in the bottom left corner, it's pretty small on your screen, but you can see a yellow arrow that's pointing to where this image is on the site plan. So that might help to orient you as we're going through here. But this is the focal point of our development. This is the mixed-use plaza that will serve as our town square for our development and the gathering place. If we go to the next slide, I'll show you an image of that same area. And this is the same area, but from another view. And what you're seeing here in the foreground is the Riverwalk train station. And we want this train station to be a place, a destination in and of itself that people would want to go to encourage ridership. And so we imagine that there's a restaurant and a brewery spilling out of it, and it's activated in the way that many other great transit stations elsewhere in the country are activated. So we can keep going to the next slide. And this is sort of that same area. And the goal here in the design is to bring walkability and a sense of place to the area. And so we want you to be able to walk from your unit or walk from the train station through a really exciting and vibrant retail area that was designed at the human scale. And what I mean by that is the ground floor area where the pedestrian is experiencing the development is the most important focal point, not so much the upper floors of the building. And so we imagine that ground floor plane will be feature a grocery market, potentially a pharmacy, some soft goods, neighborhood serving retail, as well as restaurants and bars where you can meet with people and congregate, hopefully very soon. If we go to the next slide, this shows you a little bit more about what this street experience can feel like. And I think if people always ask, what have you learned and how is this development evolving in a post-COVID world? And, I think one of the most important things is outdoor dining. And so we're designing our streetscape to allow for that naturally to occur, because we think that's one of the great things that has evolved from COVID. And so this shows what that sidewalk design could feel like. Going to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the integration of the built environment with open space. As we talked about, this project features 100 acres of open space. That's half of the total developable area here. And so in order for that to be successful, we think that the adjacencies between the built environment and open space are really important and need to be synergistic in their design. And so this is an image of the extension of the San Diego River Park Trail that runs right through the development. And if you're not familiar with that, it's really exciting. It connects East County all the way to the beach. And so you'll be able, as a resident here, to hop on your bike, get on the River Park Trail and go all the way to Ocean Beach if you so desire. Or you could start at the beach and come to Riverwalk for lunch and ride back. And we think this is going to be a great feature, not only for our residents, but for the entire city of San Diego. If we go to the next slide, you can see that same image, but in a different direction. This is depicting joggers jogging along the trail and a repurposing of the existing clubhouse. And if you've ever played golf at Riverwalk, my favorite part of the whole place is this clubhouse where you can sit out on the patio and overlook the river. And so we envision turning that existing structure into a restaurant, brewery, where not everyone can enjoy it, not just golfers who are there to play around for the day. And this is really special because you wouldn't be able to build this close to the river today. So repurposing this building, we think is going to add a lot to the development and be a great place for the community together. We can go to the next slide and we'll just talk about a few other things here. I hit on this at the beginning, but one of the core values of Riverwalk is ensuring that we've got housing for all incomes. And so the on-site affordable is a huge component of this, and that's going to integrate in with the rest of the development, and no one will be able to tell the difference between affordable and market rate housing, which we think is really important in providing opportunity for all San Diegans. And additionally, we imagine that residents here are going to cross generational boundaries as well, and we think that there'll be at least one component of the project likely that will be senior housing, and that's something that we're excited about as well. So now let's talk a little bit about the commercial space for the project. As we said, we've got 1 million square feet of commercial and office space available. And here's an image of what we imagine this to be like. And Hines has pioneered a product called T3, which stands for Timber, Transit, and Technology. And it is a heavy timber construction project that's designed to feel like an old brick and timber building, think maybe Western Metal at Petco Park, but function as a Class A office building. And we've rolled this out around the world, actually. It's been very successful, and we think it will be a very successful opportunity here in Mission Valley as well. So we go to the next slide, and you can see the same structures, but from a different angle, looking into the park, and you can see the integration of our office campus with the park. And the other thing I'd like to point out about this T3 product is that not only does it have an aesthetic quality that is very appealing, but it's also really good for the environment. So mass timber actually sequesters carbon into the material, unlike traditional building materials like concrete and steel, which emit carbon in the process. And so, from an environmental perspective, this is great and fits right in with our core values for the development here. Let's go to the next slide. This is something I'm very proud of. The park at Riverwalk is going to be the largest park accessible by trolley in San Diego and the largest park delivered in the city of San Diego in the last 50 years. And we think that this parks and open space, especially in a post-COVID world, are so vital to the vibrancy of a community, and are very excited to be bringing this forward over the course of the development. If you go to the next slide, you can see what the scale of this park really is. Every time I look at this image, I get goosebumps at the opportunity that we have to create a jewel for the city of San Diego. This includes 30 acres of protected habitat surrounding the San Diego River. And as I said earlier, it's going to serve as the final connection one of the final connections for the San Diego River Park Trail, which will connect the river all the way from East County to the ocean. So to wrap it up, we'll just talk a little bit about the approval process and our next steps. We can go to the next slide here. This was over a 3-year approval process, which involved over 100 meetings with various stakeholders and 30 community meetings and workshops. You can see to the left, we took a lot of input from the community and various stakeholders, and we think all that input made the project better in the end. And so we are grateful for the partnership that we've established with the city and the community to be at the point now where we can break ground, hopefully very soon. So if we go to the next slide, we can show kind of what that partnership looked like at the end of the day. We did receive unanimous city council approval for the project, and here is an image of some of the folks that were supporting the project. And the thing I'll point out here is it's not every day that a development has support from labor, environmental groups, transit groups, and business groups. And we do think that Riverwalk really is a unique opportunity to bring something for everyone to Mission Valley, and we're proud to have had the support of all of these groups. So we'll talk just for a minute on the next slide about what are the next steps. And one of the things that is a challenge about these large master plan communities is, where do you start? And so believe me, we've thought about every iteration of how you might start this project, and have determined that we will start in the center around the transit area. And we will be building a phase of 700 to 900 units with 100,000 square feet of retail and potentially a senior component as well as affordable for that first project. And we envision that we'll be breaking ground in the first quarter of 2022. We're deeply into design right now with our architects Gensler and landscape architect design workshop. And we'll be moving dirt hopefully next year on phase 1 with a certificate of occupancy for residents to start moving in late 2024. So with that, I'll stop, and I look forward to answering any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Eric. We've actually got quite a few questions here. The first one was actually a question I was thinking of as well. How has the pandemic changed your plans regarding the office space and the amount of square footage you have there? And actually speak to all the product types, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I will start with open space. So, I think what we've learned from the pandemic is that open space is vital. Communities need it, residents need it, especially in more high density housing area. And so that has caused us to be more intentional as we've thought about restaurants, as I talked about, spilling out to allow for natural outdoor dining, as well as parks adjacent to all the developments to allow folks to do that. In terms of the residential buildings themselves, one of the great things is we are designing that first phase right now and have the opportunity to do that in the post-COVID world. And I think that following the open space themes, that's going to mean changes to balcony design and changes to common area design that we're looking forward to working through. And we actually, as Hines, have a partnership with the Mayo Clinic that's dedicated to understanding the impact of disease transmission in the built environment and how we can, through better design, improve that. So that's an ongoing effort that we're working through. And then on the commercial space, we continue to be bullish on the long-term health of this submarket and the city of San Diego. And so we haven't shied away from our plans on the commercial side and do expect that we'll be developing that in the coming years.
Thank you very much, Eric. Next question, and I'm going to combine it with another question I saw earlier. How do you plan to mitigate the periodic flooding that impacts Mission Valley? And is there any part of the river that's going to look like the Riverwalk in San Antonio?
Good question. So I'll answer the second question first. The laws around river habitat in California are a lot different than they are in San Antonio. And so as a result of that, most of the adjacencies to the river will be protected habitat areas. That said, you will still be able to, enjoy views of it, from a little bit greater of a distance from the trail or from the viewing areas at the restaurants. The second question is, how do we impact mitigation? How do we mitigate the impacts of flooding? And that's a great question that the community was very interested in, as you can imagine. And so, by and large, we are leaving the floodway and floodplain as is. As I showed in that earlier slide, we are liberating, is the technical term, a few development pads from the floodplain, which involves effectively raising them out. So when you do that, you're required to work with FEMA to ensure that there will be no direct downstream impacts or upstream impacts of any changes you make to the floodplain. So we'll be working with FEMA on that process. And the layman's way to explain it is, if you elevate a certain area, you need to widen the channel in another area, all on your property, so that the flow rate of water through the property remains constant. Sorry, I'm an engineer by training. Apologies if I got
Great answer. Next question, and again, all great questions here, and one that I'm sure a lot of people think about. How will San Diego's infrastructure be able to handle the influx of people into Mission Valley? Not just your project, but many of the others that are going. And there are plans to improve, traffic flow, landfill, water treatment, etc.
Yeah, so all those things are part of the development. We worked through a pretty detailed traffic improvement plan with the city of San Diego as a part of our development agreement. And for us, not that first and foremost includes a new train station that will hopefully take a lot of cars off the road. But we are doing dedicated improvements to Fashion Valley Road, which involve intelligent traffic signals. We still don't have intelligent traffic signals on a lot of our streets in San Diego, and they make a big difference. We're going to be installing those. We're going to widen Fashion Valley Road, which is going to make it an easier thoroughfare to get north-south through Mission Valley. And we're going to improve the bridge there. That bridge floods about every 6 months. We're going to improve that bridge to about a 10-year storm event. And so that's a quick snapshot of the traffic improvements we're doing just for our site. We're, of course, also paying into the larger DIF fees for the region, which will go to regional traffic improvements in the coming years.
Thank you, Eric. Next question, will Hines be building the entire project, or will they bring other development partners in?
I want to build as much as I can possibly build myself. And so that's our plan. We love to develop things. It's hard to predict over the years whether we'll ever bring someone else in, but our intent is absolutely to build as much of it as ourselves as possible.
Good. I think we picked up two general contractors from the first session. So we've got 10 thumbs up on have any general contractors been selected for pre-construction or any of the projects?
Yeah, so Clark Construction is engaged on a pre-con basis for this project on the infrastructure portions of it, which are very robust. We have not yet determined contractors on vertical multifamily. So that'll be forthcoming over the next year.
Thank you. Restaurants in Riverwalk, you're going to try and go locally owned, more chain. What are your thoughts there?
I always say I want this project to be authentically and organically San Diego. And so we would love to see as much local as possible.
The same question kind of asked in a different manner, so I'll just jump over that one. Next question, what would it take to provide more than 10% affordable units?
There's a great opportunity on this site. If I had the ability to pull up a site plan, I would show you. But MTS actually owns a portion of what is now the golf course, and we lease it from them. But that will revert back to MTS once we close down golf course operations. That site could accommodate something like 300 to 400 affordable units. And, as we're aware from the efforts of, former MTS chair Georgette Gomez and now Supervisor Fletcher, I think there's a real ambition on the part of MTS to be developed. And so it's my hope that over the years that can happen as we build out Riverwalk and MTS can partner with an affordable developer to bring more affordable to this site.
Perfect. Do you have, and maybe I missed this, do you have condos as well here?
We do have the ability to deliver condo, and it remains to be seen, what mix that will be as we go. The phase one is intended to be all for rent.
Okay, so in answer to this next question, the affordable housing will be for a rent product.
Yes.
Interesting question that goes along with the phasing. What do you assume relative to monthly absorption of apartment units? And do you forecast a higher absorption because you're including housing for low income and also for the workforce housing?
Sounds like a student working on their university challenge project. I expect the affordable housing will be snapped up in a second. I'm sure, as we are all aware, we have a shortage of affordable housing. And on the market rate side, I think we expect that it absorbs, similar to what we see other projects in the market do, which typically is 20 to 25 units a month.
Good. This will be the last question. Given the project's immediate access to public transit, were you granted incentives in regards to reducing your parking requirements? Or how did that work for parking with access to transit?
Yeah. So the city of San Diego passed an ordinance maybe a year or two ago that actually waives all residential parking standards for projects within a transit priority area. So we were not required to build any parking for any of our residential projects. Now, we know that we need to deliver market standard parking, and we hope people will certainly take their cars. We'll take the train. They're going to need to own cars as well. And so we're intending to provide something on the order of 1 to 1.5 parking spaces per unit. And that was something that we worked through with the community. And there is, as a result of our discussions with the community, an obligation to provide a minimum number of parking spaces for the project.
Got it. And one question that just popped up on the list, has Hines changed its thinking on completing the north-south connection from Friars Road across the river?
Yes, that's a good question. If you don't know what that means, there's a road that's contemplated that would go from Friars Road all the way down to Hotel Circle North and ultimately connect to the 8. And so what Hines is doing as a part of this project is dedicating land to make that road a possibility. And then we're also building a large portion of that road that will start at Friars and go under the trolley tracks. And it will terminate north of the river. And then there's a regional improvement planned in Mission Valley that will be a city project eventually to connect the road to Hotel Circle.
Thank you very much. Several people have asked, can we get a copy of the presentation? The answer is yes. We send out a survey from the Burnham-Moores Center every year after these programs. We appreciate you taking a look at the survey and giving us input because we want to make the programming better as the years go along. Included in that survey will be either links or the PowerPoints, not the PowerPoints, the PDFs of all the presentations today. So, Eric, thank you very, very much. Got an incredible project. Got to be so exciting for you to be overseeing that entire effort. And again, a project that will definitely transform the city of San Diego. Thank you for your time today. We're going to jump back into our networking session. We'll be back here at 9:50 for the final wrap-up session. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you are enjoying the networking opportunity here. Great platform for networking. I think I mentioned this was the first time we've used it, and we're super happy with it. Has worked out very well. I want to introduce the speakers for our last development presentation, the NAVWAR site, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with if you drive down I-5 just north of downtown. Let me quickly introduce the speakers for us today. Captain Kenneth Franklin is the Naval Base Point Loma commanding officer. He attended Florida State University, earning a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science. Has been assigned to numerous ships during his career, and at his shore assignments, Captain Franklin served as an instructor at Naval Submarine School and on the staff of Headquarters U.S. Central Command, Submarine Squadron 20, and Task Force 69. Many awards in his career: Legion of Merit, Service Medal, Joint Service Commendation Medal, Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, 3 awards, and Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, 3 awards. Captain Franklin, thanks for joining us. Thank you for your service. Along with Captain Franklin is Greg Geeson, NAVWAR Revitalization Project Manager. His duties include leading the redevelopment of 70 acres of federal property on Naval Base Point Loma Old Town campus to acquire a modern NAVWAR facility. Greg is a graduate of the University of Southern California, which we will not hold against him. Also retired in 2010 from active duty in the Navy after 20 years of service. Greg, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure to be here.
As part of this, thank you. As part of this presentation is Hassan Ikrata. Hassan is the executive director of the San Diego Association of Governments. You probably know it as SANDAG. He's considered one of the preeminent transportation planning experts in the nation, which is great to know when you see his presentation. He directs the day-to-day operations of SANDAG and implements policies set by its governing board. He holds a bachelor's and master's degree in civil and industrial engineering from, I'm going to butcher this word, I'm sure, Zaporizhzhia University in the former Soviet Union, a master's degree in civil engineering from UCLA, and a PhD candidacy in urban planning and transportation from the University of Southern California. He's also an adjunct professor in the business school at California State University, Northridge. Our final speaker, Victoria Stackwood, Director of Government Relations at SANDAG as well. She has secured more than $2 billion of capital infrastructure projects over the last 13 years. Previously, she worked as a top policy aide to members of Congress and in the House and the Senate. Political science degree from Virginia Wesleyan College and a master's in government from Johns Hopkins. What a great panel we have here to talk about. I think one of the most amazing development sites here in San Diego. So with that, I'm going to jump off, and I think we're going to turn it over to Greg and to Captain Franklin first. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, staff. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our project. The slide you see before you here shows what is all too familiar of an icon facility here in San Diego. It's on the 5 freeway as you're heading to downtown San Diego from the north. It's also on the Pacific Highway and just south of the 8. We all know it as the Old Town Campus, or some historically known as Bayfront since 1995. We had a name change to NAVWAR about 3 years ago as part of a restructuring for in the Navy. But it really reflects the change of our business type from not just space, which that portfolio is still the same size, but we're really our information warfare and what that's done in the Department of Defense and for modern warfare has really transformed the business lines that NAVWAR does. Those 3 large buildings that you see, you may not realize were actually World War II aircraft factories building B-24 bombers. So they're well over 80 years old. And quite frankly, they are well past their useful life. They did, in fact, do a fantastic American job of creating B-24 bombers for the war effort in World War II. But that time has passed, and NAVWAR's mission is no longer able to be supported by these aircraft hangars. So in case you're not aware of what NAVWAR does, we don't really advertise it too much. Obviously, a lot of what we do in the cyber information warfare and space realm was of a classified nature. But basically what NAVWAR does is we develop and do the basic research and development, the R&D, the science and technology of developing networks and computers and communication systems for the U.S. Navy. We then install that on ships, aircraft, submarines, communication stations, space assets, ocean floor, and across the world, and link all that together so that information flows smoothly for the operators, for the sailors at sea and other locations. We operate the largest network in the world with over 700,000 users, containing over 20 terabytes of data, and we get attacked over 8 million times a day. So our networks are tremendously large and vital to the Navy's operations. One of our key projects right now is the development of a network of infrastructure that really connects every sensor on the floor of the ocean, every space asset, and every sensor across our battle groups to every other platform to allow the information flow of information for intelligence gathering, information sharing, and targeting to be shared seamlessly across all assets. This is a tremendous effort, because you have to realize, of course, that unlike your businesses that have a fiber optic cable running to their desktop, we are your ultimate mobile customer. When the ships are at sea, the aircraft are in the air, there's no fiber optic cable. So the communications challenges are even greater, and making those all network together seamlessly are a challenge technically. And so we have some of the greatest scientists and engineers here in San Diego and across the world doing that work daily. NAVWAR is a command of over 11,000 people worldwide, taking all those communications, business, and warfare systems and tying them together with a base underlying architecture of cybersecurity. Of those 11,000 people worldwide, 5,000 of them are located here in San Diego, because this is where our headquarters is. This is where our Admiral is, Admiral Small, along with our major national research laboratory out top of Point Loma. So a very large contingency of our 11,000 people are here in San Diego. And our budget last year was $9.4 billion. $7 billion of that went onto direct contracts with industry, and almost $2 billion of that to small businesses. We use the very agile small businesses who develop new technologies substantially. We all know San Diego is a military town, but sometimes we don't realize how much of a military town it really is. 20% of the regional product is generated by the military in San Diego. 20% of all jobs, or actually 23% of all jobs, are created as a result of the military in San Diego. It's the largest concentration of military in the United States, with 1/4 of all Marines located here, 3 aircraft carriers, nearly 60 ships, and that number is continuing to grow as the concentration is brought here to San Diego. It's an amazing center for military might, and it's really what provides a baseline stability to the San Diego economy. NAVWAR itself brings $800 million in wages and benefits to San Diego, and of our $9 billion in contracts every year, about little over $1.5 billion of that comes right to San Diego, with $500 million going to small businesses in San Diego. Of our 5,000 federal employees in San Diego, additionally, the second order effect of those jobs is about 30,000 jobs created in San Diego, with 50% of all the cybersecurity jobs across San Diego located at NAVWAR. Now, the site I mentioned is one we're all very familiar with, just past the airport, along the 5 freeway, just south of the 8, bordered by Pacific Highway. We know it as the Old Town campus. It's actually 2 physical sites. One is 50 acres and one is 20 acres. And those sites were originally developed in 1941 as World War II aircraft factories for the B-24 bombers. This entire area is known as the Midway Pacific Highway District, and there recently was a community plan that was approved by the city and developed by the Midway Pacific Highway Community Planning Group that really transforms the area in and around us. And that group we worked very closely with over the last several years to help ensure that what we do here is a catalyst for the growth of what the community wants in and around the area and provides the economic benefit and growth to the area. So that's really what we're here to talk about today. And I'm honored to have with me the commanding officer of Naval Base Point Loma, who is the person who actually owns the land and is the CO of the facilities, not just this 2 pieces of land, but the entire Naval Base Point Loma architecture structure out on Point Loma. Captain Franklin, great to have you on board.
Hey, thanks, Greg, and thanks, Starth, for having us, or staff, excuse me, for having us here today. It's a rare opportunity that I get an opportunity to kind of be a cheerleader for what the Navy's doing. Like Greg said, I wish I did own the property. I personally don't own the property. Naval Base Point Loma, it is Navy property here at the Old Town Campus Complex, just over 70.5 acres. Just go back to start real quick. Again, thank you, staff, for having us. I'm going to assume by your lack of comment that you are going to hold it against me that I went to Florida State University. So I'm going to apologize in advance for that. We can deal with that separately during the private chat rooms. With respect to the Old Town Complex here, as Greg mentioned, much like myself, getting up there in age, these facilities have seen better days. If you can go to the next slide there, Greg. Yeah, so as you mentioned, about 70.5 acres on Navy-owned property is the Old Town Campus. And they were manufactured back in the 1940s, where they used to build the old B-24 bombers for World War II. About 2.5 years ago, the Navy submitted a request for interest. And what we were looking for, I say we, I mean the Navy, was looking for was a safe and secure, modernized, state-of-the-art facility for NAVWAR, because these buildings have seen better days. The paint is literally chipping off the walls. When it does rain, and it's a beautiful day in San Diego, I'm having to, I'm new to the San Diego area, mostly East Coast. I've been in the Navy for over 30 years, and I'm having to recalibrate my definition of rain, what you guys call rain here in San Diego. But when it does rain, it does cause problems. It does affect the environment there at NAVWAR, and we're really talking about the safety and security of the personnel and the equipment within. And so in many cases, there's an open laydown storage in these big warehouses, but in other cases, they've had to develop a building within a building because it's just not really suited to support what NAVWAR's growing mission has become. And so the end state, or the goal of the Navy here, is ultimately to have a state-of-the-art facility that is a hub for technical development for NAVWAR. And this is going to support the premier Center for Cyber Warfare for NAVWAR. But also in conjunction with that, what the Navy wants to do is not only provide a state-of-the-art facility for NAVWAR, but also something that supports the community here in San Diego. Next slide, Greg. So just kind of a broad brush overview, they require just over 1 million square feet of office space, secure spaces that's for secret conversations and higher potentially conversations, because a lot of what they do, what they work on, is classified. And they do need to hold briefs and updates in controlled spaces. So they do have facility requirements there, just over 1 million square feet, including warehouse and storage space. I will say that we are looking at all options on the table in relocating some of the warehouse and laydown area for both NAVWAR and NIWC and NERPIO, which is Navy Regional Plant Equipment Office. They're at OTC 2. That's that other little area just south of Pacific Highway. We are looking at a number of options, including relocating some of that warehouse and storage space, either at Naval Base San Diego, up at Miramar, here at Naval Base Point Loma. So all options are kind of on the table for relocating them. One of the things that was considered was potentially relocating NAVWAR altogether and just selling that property wholesale to San Diego and potentially Sandak. But that doesn't really support the NAVWAR mission. NAVWAR is right here in the hub of a fleet concentration area, not just with Naval Base Point Loma, but with Naval Base San Diego and Naval Base Coronado. So Naval Base Point Loma, for those who don't know, it's about 1,800 acres of total property, including here at Subbase. We've got some area over at Seaside by Cabrillo, also by 3rd Fleet there just on the western side of Point Loma, but we also have Harbor Drive down there by the marina just southwest of the city of San Diego. As mentioned, the Old Town Complex up there by Pacific Highway. So Point Loma, even with 1,800 square feet, is kind of small potatoes compared to what Coronado and 32nd Street, Naval Base San Diego provide. And so to try to relocate NAVWAR and disconnect them from the fleet concentration area is not really efficient and not what we want. So we want to try to consolidate and make the best use of the space, but provide NAVWAR what it needs. Next slide, Greg. So as I said earlier, about 2.5 years ago, the Navy submitted a request for interest, and SANDAG came to the table with a proposition to propose a transit center. And so about 1.5 years ago, September 2019, the Big Navy and San Diego Association of Governments, they signed a memorandum of agreement with the primary goal to provide NAVWAR the facility it needs, and that included with the NIWC and with what NERPIO needs. And this memorandum of agreement allows for, it's a collaborative effort, exchange of information. It's non-binding, but it is a memorandum of agreement that we're going to work together towards a common end state that NAVWAR is going to get what it needs, and maybe San Diego, the community, gets what it needs as well. And so that initial agreement was just the kind of the bare bones framework for starting those discussions. And then in January of last year, just over a year ago, they followed up with a agreement that further defined the key events and milestones that we want to work towards those common goals, including a potential transit hub at Old Town Complex. But all that said, we're going to continue to explore alternatives. Like I said, all options are on the table, but we still want to meet all the applicable requirements. Next slide. So there are listed here 5 alternatives. I say 6 alternatives because there is a 6th alternative, which, Ken Franklin's perspective is that the last alternative, the no action alternative, that's status quo. That's continue doing business as usual. NAVWAR does not get a new facility. We don't get a mobile, transit hub here in San Diego, and we just keep on doing what we're doing. To me, that is the least preferred of any of the options. I will caveat the other 5 options that are being considered that the Navy has not leaned any one way or the other towards any preferred alternative just yet. But we're working closely with SANDAG and the community here to kind of further find which way is best for everybody. The first alternative here is what they call Navy recapitalization. Basically, the Big Navy goes to Congress hat in hand and gets a budget approved to get NAVWAR the facility that it needs. Now, that would not involve redesign of the area. It wouldn't really significantly impact what happens to the community of San Diego. There'd be no transit center, there'd be no housing, there'd be no shopping mall. Nothing like that would be on the table for alternative 1. So NAVWAR, yes, they get what they need, but there's no commercial residential development, there's no transit center, and no PPV, no public-private development venture. So this is the second least preferred alternative. It's pretty costly. It does get NAVWAR what it needs, but it's not ideal because, they say the expression that compromise is when everybody meets in the middle and, nobody is really happy. This is not really a compromise and not ideal. I think compromise is somewhere lies in the middle between alternatives 2 and 5. And as you see, alternatives 2 and 3 is a mixed use between high and low density involvement. It has NAVWAR gets what it needs, but there's also commercial residential development there, but there's no mobile transit center. But we do work with SANDAG and the community to get what NAVWAR needs and what the community needs. Then alternative 4 and 5 are kind of an iteration of the same thing with either high or low density commercial residential development, but this includes the transit center, which is a total effort separate and apart from what we're trying to accomplish with the Navy. Next slide, please. So as part of this effort, the entire team with SANDAG, NAVWAR, Big Navy, and the community of San Diego, they are conducting what's called an environmental impact statement. And this is in support of the NEPA, which is the National Environmental Protection Act. And they look at all aspects. Now, some of the key aspects we'll talk about here, but they look at the broad scope of what is the impact of this overall project, both what the Navy wants to do and what Sandag and the community want to do. And that includes air quality, traffic, transportation, land use, what's the best use of the land, how do we use it most efficiently? Because this is prime real estate, we do want to make the best use of it. And I will say, just from my perspective, with respect to transportation and traffic, I know there's a lot of concerns with the community about traffic getting worse on the interstate there, and I can certainly appreciate that. But I would offer, having grown up in New England, that people don't drive to Grand Central Station from Greenwich, Connecticut, and then leave their car there and then go see the sights and take cabs and subway everywhere. They leave their car at Greenwich, Connecticut, and they park and ride. And they ride the commercial transportation, whether it's a bus, train, tram, whatever the case is, they ride from there. And I know that with this environmental impact statement that we're looking really hard at how the effort is going to impact traffic and transportation to make sure that it either has no impact or minimal impact, or ideally it improves traffic and transportation flow. Next slide. And some of the other key aspects of what we're looking at in this environmental impact statement is the cumulative impacts. What is the overall impact to the economy? What is the overall impact to the city of San Diego? Is it making better or worse? But they also keep in mind that, hey, how's this going to impact visual resources? What's the sightline going to look like for people up on the hillside there and looking down the bay, and vice versa, people looking up on the bay? What's it going to look like to them? And you may see a lot of conceptual drawings of what the transit center and what the PPV venture might look like with both commercial and the real estate development there. But all those are still in the very, very nascent stages of development, and nothing's been decided yet. And also part of that is the cultural and historic resources. As Greg mentioned, these are circa 1940 buildings that there's a lot of history there. And we want to try to not necessarily preserve the entire site, but make sure that we're keeping that in mind as we get into the construction phase. Next slide. All right, so broad brush overview of how we got to where we are today, as you see from the yellow flag there on the right. Back in 2017, the Navy started the area development plan. Hey, what's the best way to go about getting NAVWAR the facility that it needs, the state-of-the-art facility to support their mission? And as I mentioned, back in September of 18, the Navy submitted a request for interest, and Sandag came to the table, signed that cooperation memorandum of agreement in September of 2019. And then early last year, we started that environmental impact statement, the environmental analysis that I spoke about. February of last year, they did the public scoping period. So initially taking inputs from the community of San Diego. We got a lot of really great inputs, and we appreciate that. We're looking forward to getting similar inputs during the next public comment period. So with respect to the EIS, the draft EIS is just about 95% complete. Very, very close, and we're in the red zone right now, just just a few yards away from the end zone, and making a decision on how we're going to proceed going forward. That draft EIS, we're very close to releasing that to the public. That should come up here in late spring, early summer, here in the next couple months. So very excited about that. Once that's released, it will be publicly disseminated, widely, broadly available for everybody to review and comment on. There will be a 60-day public comment period, open for discussion, open to feedback. And I will tell you that from the Navy's perspective, we want a robust dialogue with the community. We want to know what the community thinks. The Navy doesn't want to get hung up in litigation, and then we're stalled out for 10, 15, 20 years, like similar projects that the Navy's tried to get involved with. The bureaucracy is tough enough in getting the funding for something like this. We don't want to get hung up in litigation and having to try and appease everybody. During that public comment period, what the Navy's looking for is like, hey, did we cover all the bases? In this environmental impact statement, did we take an accurate look at how it's going to impact the community, or did we miss something? We're not really looking for new ideas. NAVWAR and Sandag and the Big Navy, is not really looking for new ideas. And hey, what you guys should really do is build a high-speed rail system like what they have in Paris or in Italy. That's not really, at this point, that we're kind of well past that. And we're really looking to see, hey, with all of the environmental analysis that we've done, was that adequate or did we miss something? And so that's what we're looking for, is a robust dialogue with the community and getting your feedback. And we value that feedback in going forward. So after that 60-day public comment period, later this year in the fall, and all this is very TBD, and that's why I'm giving kind of squishy dates there. We'll put out the final environmental impact statement, and then the Navy, way above my pay grade, the Navy will issue a record of decision on which way it's going to go forward. And it will be one of those 6 options. If the Navy decides it's just cost prohibitive, it's not worth it, we'll just status quo, then that no alternative action is what they'll go with. And I said at the beginning, that is not ideal. That doesn't really get NAVWAR what it needs. And for sake of argument, I would offer it doesn't really get the community the best use of that property, as we kind of talked about earlier. And how you can get involved is be part of that public comment period, how the community can get involved. And as Greg has so kindly put at the bottom of all these slides, that www.navwar-revitalization.com, you can go there to that website, and there's a lot of frequently asked questions, and a lot of your questions are probably already answered there. And it's open to the public. There's no CAP card or special ID or special account required. That is open to all, and we welcome your feedback and welcome your questions. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Greg.
Thank you, Captain. Our next speakers will be the signers of the agreement with the Secretary of the Navy, Hassan and Victoria, whom we're working closely with, sharing information about our project so they can make their best approach to the public. Hassan, Victoria?
Thank you, Captain Franklin, Greg. Appreciate your partnership, and I appreciate the presentation, great presentation. Before I introduce Victoria, I just a couple of things for the audiences here. I came here to San Diego a bit over 2 years, and my goal was from the beginning to reimagine the future of transportation system in San Diego. And part of that reimagining is to allow San Diegans to dream, and to us, the civic leadership, to make sure these dreams come true. And so we're remaking the future transportation system. And one of the 30 transportation hubs that we're planning around the region, the Central Mobility Hub is the largest. And let me make it very clear. This is, I've been in this business for 30 years. I worked in LA most of those years. This is by far the largest undertaking I ever done in my career. And San Diego is a perfect place for that. I'm going to repeat what Mayor Gloria said. It's time for us to act like a big city. 2nd largest in California, 8th largest in the country. This project, when it's done, and when us and our partners from the Navy get to a point where we do it, is going to transform not only the 70 acres that the Navy owns, but the whole Midway, from the sports arena to downtown Los Angeles. And what we're thinking about in scale here is we're thinking about a development that takes future mobility into account. This is not going to be a car-centered development. This is going to be a multimodal approach, an amazing economic opportunity, an amazing environmental opportunity for us to do things where people could come, live, work, entertain. This is a place where we're going to take affordable housing to new heights. This is a place where not only from San Diego, from all over the nation and the world would come and say, we want to do what San Diego did. By far, this is very complicated. This is going to be very expensive. But I will tell you that there is nothing worth anything that's not complicated and expensive, and it's not going to take a long time. And I am really honored to be partnering with our Navy friends. Obviously, like Captain Kenneth said, they have alternatives, and we're glad to be in 2 of these alternatives. But at the end of the day, we're going to build a San Diego Grand Central that's going to redefine what transportation is in the future. So For every project, there is a driver, there is a champion. And right now, I'm going to introduce that champion. I wish for every entity to have a Victoria, because this project will not be where it is without her. So with that, Victoria, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. So for those who don't know who the San Diego Association of Governments is, we are the Metropolitan Planning Organization. The board is comprised of the 18 cities of the jurisdictions that make up San Diego County and the county. In addition, we have the military and the DoD, the Airport Authority, the Port of San Diego, MTS, NCTD, Mexico, and the Tribal Chairmen's Association, who also sit at our board. So as we go through this presentation, not only do I want to discuss sort of the opportunities, the why we're pursuing, what we're pursuing, but to actually also highlight some of the differences of working with a federal agency, state agency acknowledged like SANDAG, and really try to tease out some of the differences with working with government versus private sector to private sector. So with that, next slide. So like Hassan said, he came here a little over 2 years ago, and as part of that vision, we have 5 priority projects. The 2021 regional plan is really the backbone and the catalyst to how we figured out that the CMH was necessary. Like Hassan says, we have over 20 mobility hubs, and CMH is one of them that's included in the plan. The plan is $166 billion of infrastructure, transportation investments that we're going to make. And part of the reason why I bring that up here is because we're looking to partner with you. We're looking to partner with the Navy and the private sector to make these projects come to life. And like some of the former presentations that you heard, we have something all in common. We want sustainable economic growth activities that are going to promote jobs, access to education, and really, support our quality of life. So that's the regional plan. The other 4 projects include the Del Mar Bluffs and Losan, which is the Los Angeles to San Diego rail corridor, the Midcoast Trolley Project, which is a project that you probably see going up at UCSD and is crossing over the 5, the Central Mobility Hub, which we'll go into, and then Otay Mesa East, which is a federal port of entry that the agency is looking to work with the federal government to build. So the next slide. Central Mobility Hub, what is it? This is a transportation intermodal center that will connect over 500 miles of planned rail throughout the region. This will serve Amtrak, fast train, trolley, bus, bikes, pedestrian, and coaster, and what other future mobility things that we have, such as automated drones and automated cars. We are looking at, from a planning perspective, really utilizing this example to try to be flexible to address the additional mobility needs of the future. The main catalyst for how this comes, and this is sort of the story behind the story, while we were working on putting together the regional transportation plan, we noticed that there was no, and it's obvious, direct transit connection to the airport. So Hassan, working with our former mayor, and with the city leadership, because we have at SANDAG that forum to have these types of regional conversations, convened an airport subcommittee group aimed at specifically looking at how do we provide the region a direct transit option when going to the airport that competes with the car. That is how Central Mobility Hub came to fruition. The proposed project, if constructed properly, aims to be the most sustainable in the entire country. We are, based on the state policies, we are looking to lower greenhouse gas emissions, lower VMT, improve air quality, and really be a self-sustaining project. And we've also committed through, and I can talk about that later, through the legislative process to codify some of these agreements that we are 100% committed to facilitating at the end of the day. Next slide. So this slide simply just shows you the location. I won't spend a whole lot of time because Greg's slides are much prettier than mine, but you can see that where the star is to the north at the Navy Old Town campus that is located about 1.5 miles north of the airport. So it seemed very logical that we would look to see if this location was available. Next slide. So with that, I think here's where the story starts for us too, is like you saw in the slides that the Navy presented earlier, they were holding a process concurrent to our airport subcommittee looking for a transit connection to revitalize the NAVWAR facilities. And through that process, basically we came together and said, how come your project's not talking to our project? Because I think there's a lot of synergies here and we can work together. So basically these two ideas collided, and now we're here to present to you one of the most exciting projects potentially in the San Diego region over the last 50 years, and potentially the largest transit hub on west of the Mississippi. Next slide. So the project includes, the premise is to put a transportation intermodal hub at the NAVWAR facilities on their 72 acres to increase the value of their land by increasing the accessibility of their property, to then stimulate economic growth, increase the value, and allow for the Navy to revitalize their facilities based on the value capture. This slide shows you sort of the expanded opportunities. The green spots are properties owned by government that we feel could be parks that could be used to sort of connect. So I'm now moving from the NAVWAR facility and we're moving north towards Sports Arena, and we really look at the Midway corridor as a really great potential for economic development based on the fact that the city of San Diego has upzoned that area, and based on the regional collaboration that we have between, like I said, the port, the airport, the Navy, Sandag. We all have a vested interest in making this promenade a walkable feature that connects the community and ultimately provides jobs and increases, the economic base of the city. Let's see here, next slide. And this is really where, I'd like to spend a little bit of time pointing out the benefits of working with a regional transportation entity like Sandag. As I said earlier, we have a $67 billion plan that we're looking to put in place, which is going to invest in infrastructure. This is good because it creates an opportunity to leverage taxpayer dollars to increase property value. In addition to that, Sandag provides a regional forum to facilitate difficult conversations, talk about project development, and we all bring money to the table. Additionally, we're able to address policy issues, and we're able to change law, relationships, and we're able to provide certainty to a process that if you're working with another private sector entity, you may not be able to have. An example of that was Mayor Gloria last year, working with Hassan and Sandag, was able to pass AB 2731, which is state legislation, which is the first CEQA streamlining legislation passed in the history of California directly aimed at transit. And we believe that once we put together this framework, if you will, there's all kinds of other environmental, good stewardship, good planning that we also built into there so that we could get the support of the building trades, we can get the support of the enviros, and we can bring sort of a wide range of stakeholders together to really back the project, and ultimately everybody can kind of gain a little bit of what they want. So for instance, not only does the 2731 have CEQA streamlining, but it also pre-negotiates carbon and the lowering of GHG. It allows for us to do LEED Platinum, and just really sort of codifies our environmental commitment to making sure that this project really takes hold of all of the different components out there that make these types of projects competitive. So the next slide, please. So again, I said in my second bullet, there's financing, and I'm sure there's some of you that are interested in this, but Sandag, as a regional transportation planning agency, has access to Federal Transit Administration funds, federal highway funds, DOT. In addition to that, we believe that we have the ability to work with developers directly to be able to finance and look at construction loans and put together a lucrative package that would ultimately benefit those that are going to be involved. In addition, we're also looking, because of our collaborative forum that we have at SANDAG, at enhanced infrastructure financing districts. It's interesting because the federal property of NAVWAR is entitled to them. So currently it doesn't collect sales taxes. And so this would be a real benefit to then allow us to collect the funds and then put it back into projects that truly meet the public needs. In addition, we are looking at ballot measures and measure bonds, looking at Hassan's track record and what he was able to do in the LA region. We're looking to emulate that. And currently we have a local sales tax that's dedicated to building transit and highways throughout the region. And we're looking to expand that as well, because as our needs grow, we need to be able to have match and really be competitive as we go out to try to sell this project to the market. In addition, we're able to get TIFIA loans. And last but not least, we have railroad rehabilitation investment financing, which we're looking at, as you guys would consider, moving the tracks from Old Town so that they would align nicely into the CMH. And I should also note that when we talk about the Central Mobility Hub, we're not just isolating ourselves to that 72 acres. We're looking at direct transit or direct highway connections from the I-5. We're looking at increasing the pedestrian walkability and creating a promenade. We're looking at providing access to the airport with a transit connection that actually makes sense so that it can hit and get you to the terminals as quickly as possible. We're looking at streets and roads. If those who live in the San Diego region, if you're trying to get out of town on Grape, Sassafras, or Hawthorne at 5 o'clock when the county building's lit out, it's difficult. We need to redo those local streets and roads. And that's where SANDAG can come in. We can play for that type of mitigation to help offset some of these costs. So I think it really brings an innovative approach to some of the real estate, components and mechanisms that you are traditionally looking at. We are trying to augment that. And as we continue to work together and get more experience working together, SANDAG as an entity can go and we can make sure that we are creating a policy framework that supports these types of relationships. Last slide. So as we were speaking, everybody's kind of has these, loose dates, but we are going to begin the Central Mobility Hub environmental clearance next month. We are going through the process of the noticing. So we're very excited to embark on that. This project has been moving at lightning speed. It's because of the leadership of the Navy and with SANDAG, and like I said, the leadership of Mayor Gloria and in the other jurisdictions who actually understand that this is a system, that this is going to actually create a system that's viable for the entire region. The Navy is also working towards releasing their impact statement, and I'm sure that they'll be doing that in 2021. I think they're fall. So in conclusion, we have an unprecedented opportunity to partner with the Navy to ensure that we're able to provide them state-of-the-art facilities by adding a Central Mobility Hub to the 72 acres to revitalize, increase the value of the property, and ultimately revitalize the entire Midway Pacific area. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you would have now.
Thank you very much, Captain Franklin, Greg, Hassan, and Victoria. I'm going to go through questions here. We've got a lot of them. Is the Navy interested, and maybe you covered this, but let's go through these. Is the Navy interested in long-term ground lease or fee simple sell? And I think I know the answer to that, but Greg, why don't you take that one on?
Yes, thank you, staff. The Navy's interested in getting our mission requirements met. So that's not a direct way to answer the question, but whatever comes out of a process that gets us to an agreement with a developer or with SANDAG that allows us to meet our mission requirements, that's our goal. So whether that's a fee simple sale, an exchange in kind, an enhanced use lease. All those options are on the table until we see what is available.
Let me just jump here. Another question. Are there plans to expand the NAVWAR unit, create more of these high-wage technical jobs? What does that look like for the future of NAVWAR in San Diego?
NAVWAR is expanding. It has continued to expand over the last 10 years. We did a look back and saw that depending on what area you look at, anywhere between 3 to 7% growth across our business lines is what's happening today. Not planned for the future, it's what's happening today. The cyber and information warfare areas of the military are in high demand, as we all know, as we see it in the news every day. The amount of adversaries trying to get into our technology and take our ideas, our thoughts, and our intelligence away from us happens daily. And NAVWAR is a critical node in protecting the defense information that we have. And so that's a very strong growth area. The technology that goes along with that is a very technical, high-paying, engineering-focused business line.
Thank you. Will Sandag be working with Brookfield Property to integrate the Midway District and its redevelopment plan with the sports arena area to the central mobility hub? And you may have spoken to that, Victoria, but if you want to expand on that.
Sure. There's tremendous opportunities that we have with the CMH. And I think to answer your question, bluntly, yes, we're talking to them. And we're looking to see what they're trying to facilitate on the sports arena property. And we're also trying to read, what does the community want? But I think ultimately there's no doubt that we need to connect these areas because, currently right now, as you've seen it, Rosecrans doesn't actually go all the way down, and Pacific Highway isn't directly connected either. So that local streets and roads component is something that Sandag's committed to. But I'll let Hassan answer too.
Sure. And this is the comment about the Midway area, which is about 1,200 acres from the sports arena to downtown. Right now, it's pretty much have no infrastructure whatsoever. If you don't know San Diego very well, like myself, and you're in one place, you can get to the other with ease. So we're working with Brookfield and others to make sure that whatever transportation improvement is consistent with our imagination of the future transportation system. San Diegans should have choices, whether it's to drive, take transit, walk, bike, but whatever choice they take, it should be safe and reliable. And I believe very strongly in the opportunities are so great for the Midway. And again, with our partners from the United States Navy, if Alternative Forum 5, the one they put it is the one picked, I think the potential for sustainable an economic driving engine for this region is there. So we're hoping that everyone will be part of the discussion as we move.
Thank you very much. Some of you may remember that this site was the NAOP site for the competition with the universities a few years back, and what came out of that was really pretty spectacular. And through that process, I really got to know.
Do you remember what school won that competition?
Yeah, I do remember. Yes, it was USD. Yes, thank you very much for that setup. Having been involved in that, I came to, understand a lot of the structure there. But even with that great level of understanding, there's still a lot I don't understand. So one of the questions here, Greg, that I think you addressed, but I'll give you a chance to readdress. I was under the impression that NAVWAR had a commitment with Sandag to build a central mobility hub, but it sounds like that's just one option. Is that correct?
That is correct. We have in our EIS process that we started over a year and a half ago, there, as the captain well articulated, there's 5 specific alternatives. 2 of those 5 include a central mobility hub. And so we did an analysis of the full range of options. And that's really the 16 areas that we studied over the last 18 months, 2 years, to look at the environmental impact of any of those decisions. And that's what we're coming through right now, is going to bring that back to the public in the summer and say, okay, we've heard you. We studied 16 specific areas with lots of engineers and architects and subject matter experts. environmental specialists to really look at these alternatives and come back and present the analysis back to the public. And we're looking back to hear from the public, and is that analysis sufficient? Is that what you wanted? Is that what you wanted us to hear? And we want to hear what their thoughts are on that process. And then with that same time period, we're working very closely with SANDAG to provide them the information that they need to make some decisions and to present their case to the public as well. So that's really what the sharing agreements are about, is allowing us from federal government to local government level to share information and help bring together the thoughts so they have all the ideas that they need so they can really present their case. And then we'll go to the public with that, and then the public has a chance to decide.
Staff, if I may add to what Greg just said, and I agree with everything he said. I want people to leave no doubt whatsoever that this region deserves a central mobility hub. And right now, we hope it is at NAVWAR, but that's one of the alternatives, and the process is going to move forward. But there's no question about this whole area needs a remake of the transportation infrastructure, which barely exists today. And I would say, like Greg said, the process is we have alternatives. We're going to pick alternative, but whatever this alternative is, the region will have San Diego Grand Central that connect all the rail or the existing and future. And let me just say, this is a facility that located on what we call the Los Angeles corridor, the San Diego to San Luis Obispo, and that corridor is the second busiest in the nation after the Northeast. People do hard to believe that, but we have the second busiest corridor in the country here. This corridor have a national significance. There is not a place in the country where I could say there is a national, state, and regional significance for a corridor that we need to invest in. So there will be no doubt that we will have a central mobility hub. We would hope it is at the NAVWAR and it's coordinated, and we're really grateful for the Navy and their partners.
Thank you very much, Hassan. I just want to reiterate for this question, can we get copies of the presentation? Yes. We'll be sending out a survey to all the attendees, and attached to that will be the presentations. Reflecting back on Riley's discussion when Pacifica Properties bought their project in South Bay in 2000, I think. If you asked them how long they thought it'd take to get to fruition, I don't think 21 years would have been the answer. So the question here is, what is the overall scheduling you think for complete build out of the site?
As I told you before, staff, our crystal ball is pretty clear looking backwards. I'm pretty clear what we've done. I can even tell you where we are. And I can look about 6 months into the future and tell you that we hope to get to the completion of our public comment period by the end of the summer, and then begin our final EIS and release that by the end of the year. And then go to a record of decision, which is the last step of the EIS process that really controls the floodgate of what happens next. Once I pass that record of decision, there's many alternatives available. That's part of the process, determining which of those alternatives we're going to follow. And so from that, you could see a request for proposals going out, a request for qualifications, an engagement with industry. It could be led by SANDAG. It could be led by the Navy. We really won't know until we see what those alternatives give us. But we would expect that probably to happen in the 22 timeframe, at least that process to start. Those processes of a project this size to take it 12 months to a year, 12 months to a year, a year to 18 months to go through that process of engaging with industry and developing those proposals, analyzing those proposals, which pushes you out another year or year and a half, and then a decision will be made at that point on which direction to go, and then you start the design and build process. So, as a real estate gentleman yourself, you know very well, much better than I do, of how long projects like this take. It's going to be some years yet until we get a move-in date, but we're talking years, not decades.
Steph, and I would add to what Greg just said, this doesn't have to take forever, like mostly People say, well, if it's going to cost that much and it's going to take long, therefore forget it. And this is really, San Diego is famous for that. They great ideas, but I believe this project could move much faster than any project in the country, simply because Victoria mentioned we have a bill by then Assembly Member Todd Gloria, our mayor, our great mayor, that makes it really clear that we're serious. Victoria also mentioned that we expect Governor of California and all the administration to be absolutely a great partner to move things along. And we'll also expect locally, this is going to build many housing units, and many of them will be, a lot of it will be affordable. So yes, it's going to take time. But I am hoping that within, once the decisions are made, which alternative to take, that we will be environmentally cleared and 30% designed for whatever project we move forward. It's all depends, though. This is my final comment on this. Whether San Diego is going to say yay or no.
Good.
At the end of the day, San Diego is going to have to pay for this. And if they say yes, I think at San Diego, we're, with our partners, we're more than ready to move this with a lightning speed. If they say no, that's their decision. But I think this is the greatest opportunity.
Can I add one thing?
Yes,
one
of
thing.
course.
So this is a real estate conference. Where there's a will, there's a way, and there's no where there's no clear-cut path on a project of this size with the magnitude. I didn't even really go into the fact that we're looking at over 9,000 housing units, like we're saying, affordable, low, medium range. We're looking for to set up the new community, the new place. We're looking for jobs. We're looking for really that sort of sense of community that we're trying to build there. But I would also turn it back to you. So if you have ideas, you have connections, we're looking for anchor tenants. We are looking for different approaches of what the Navy would like to see and how best to implement it. Give us a call. You know where Sandag is. You know where Hassan's at. While we are in the conceptual stages and we're moving fast, it doesn't mean that, we have it all figured out. So please come to us with your big ideas.
Great. I'm going to ask one last question. Go ahead, Greg.
One of your guests, Nicholas, asked a question that kind of spring-loads off that, and I want to clarify, because we get this a lot, is, how do you, the question is, would you go with an alternative that includes more private development? Does that limit the Navy's use of the facilities? And I want to explain, just for clarity's sake, we're on the first floor of 70 acres right now. We are basically just sitting on the ground floor of all those buildings. And we need that land as long as we're on the first floor. But if we're able to modernize facilities and go to a modern structure that is vertical and allows us to have the synergies of being co-located in a vertical structure, we need a lot less land. And that's really what facilitates the ability to bring in the housing that we're talked about in the alternatives in the EIS. That is what really opens up the value of the land, is us getting into new facilities that are secure and modern and vertical in nature to allow the rest of the land to be developed.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the last question. There were a lot of questions here, which is phenomenal, that we're not going to be able to get to, unfortunately. I think some of them probably can't be answered at this time. But the last question I'm going to ask for Victoria and Hassan, for what I'm going to call kind of the doubting Thomases out there. When they announced the light rail system from UCSD, coming into downtown and Old Town, the discussion was, golly gee, we're going to have autonomous vehicles in 5 years, and people are going to be ride sharing, and do we really need mass transit? So, leave us with your thoughts on where that's going, why this is so critical to San Diego.
Well, let me start, and I'll have Victoria add. And I think this has been a debate over the last 2 years, and that debate did not just start 2 years ago. It's been many, many years. Would people take transit? And let me just say it simply. Right now, we have one choice to get around. That's to drive. And I don't think that's right for any region. Secondly, I think we see it in Europe. We see it in the East Coast. If you build the right transit, people will take it. But that doesn't mean, and we're under no illusion that, you know, we're all going to leave our cars or get rid of our cars. But if 10% of us were decide to take another option, we would win whether we drive or take transit. Now, people say this during COVID-19, transit ridership is way down. People say, will ever people take transit? I remember 9/11 discussion. Will people ever fly? You know, if people's going to stop going to baseball games and basketball games, maybe if they stop doing that, maybe they'll stop taking transit. I don't believe that. I believe the future is about choices. I believe that the sustainability, economic and environmental sustainability, depends on how we plan this. So yes, absolutely, this is needed. It's an investment in the future, and I believe many San Diegans, many generations to come will be grateful that we're thinking about this.
Thank you, Victoria. Anything to add to that?
I would just say that type of planning and foresight is what we're doing now. You know, we've been doing regional transportation plans for 30 years, and whoever saw scooters and bikes, you know, being able to be shared, zip cars, those types of things. And we've been able to accommodate that. And I think, you know, working with academia and working with planners like Hassan, you know, I think we will be able to facilitate a multimodal hub, and they'll be all around the region that are aimed at doing exactly what you're doing, remaining flexible to address the upcoming technology and the mobility needs of our region.
And staff, just your audiences know, obviously autonomous vehicle, full autonomous, you know, they call it level 5, is many years away. But we're anticipating future technology. Future mobility is one of our 5 big moves. And that future mobility, and we're doing it smart in San Diego, and becoming an example to the rest of the state and the country. We're looking at a multimodal approach that anticipates future technologies, but do not necessarily rely totally on it. So we think the future is ours. Obviously, it is not an exact science. Forecasting is difficult. But we believe from experience that the way we're going about this is the right way for San Diego.
Well, I just want to thank the 4 of you. Greg, do you have something to add?
Good.
I just want to thank the 4 of you. Amazing development opportunity. You know, when we look at the 3 sites that were proposed today, they are truly going to be transformative to San Diego, to its real estate, to the people that live here. Once again, I want to thank all of our sponsors for supporting our program, which I want to remind everyone supports our students. That's really, you know, the primary reason that we exist is to make sure we're taking care of our students and producing good leaders in the real estate community for years to come.